Welcome to Front Office Pros. Today, we're going to be talking about the best rookie IDP landing spots for Dynasty Fantasy Football.
Hike!
Well, this is the last episode in our series of talking about the best rookie landing spots for these rookie players. This is very important to Joe and I. It should be to you too, because depending on where these players go, it means quite a bit. So we're going to be talking about the places where maybe it's not the most realistic. We try to keep that in mind, but these are the places where we'd be really excited if they went there. So let's talk about the guy who probably is the odds-on favorite to be the highest drafted defensive player in this class. That's going to be defensive end Abdul Carter from Penn State. Joe, where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, well, this one is pretty realistic, and I'm going to go with the Cleveland Browns. I just really think him being able to play opposite of Myles Garrett, two generational defensive ends coming off the edge for the Cleveland Browns. And, they have a pretty decent secondary as well at the cornerback position. So, that the rush and coverage goes hand in hand. And I just think, I really would just feel like this, like I said, see those two generational players coming off the edge and wreaking havoc in the backfield for the Browns. And I feel like that'd be a great landing spot for him.
Well, Joe, you and I are starting out strong here. I also have Abdul Carter going to the Cleveland Browns as the best landing spot for him. Like you mentioned it, him and Myles Garrett would just absolutely wreak havoc. And honestly, I mean, thinking about other bookend tandems, they might be one of the best right from the jump. I mean, I think of Will Anderson and Daniil Hunter or Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. But, Abdul Carter's got a lot of potential, and he's going to have, if he goes to a team that he's the guy, he has to be the guy. Maybe he faces those double teams, but they can't double team Abdul Carter if they got Myles Garrett. So it's going to give a lot of opportunity for him. So I think, to me, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I mean, who else would you want him? I mean, there's no better situation of who he could get paired with. I mean, sure, maybe if he gets paired with like Micah Parsons in Dallas, but I don't think that's going to happen. So, but Myles Garrett, I mean, that's a great situation.
Which honestly, I feel like, Myles Garrett's a more prototypical defensive end where Micah Parsons was a converted inside linebacker. And has been an edge rusher on the outside and can be used somewhat as a chess piece. So just thinking, a little bit of a different player. So I think Abdul Carter would benefit more from pairing with Myles Garrett.
Yeah, especially because he's most like Micah Parsons as well. He's got that versatility. So having, like you said, a more prototypical edge rusher opposite him does make sense.
Are you enjoying this episode so far? Well, if you are, subscribe to our YouTube channel, smash that like button, and hit the notification bell for upcoming videos. We do videos throughout the year, so you're not going to want to miss what we have in store. So going to our next guy, defensive end, Jalon Walker from the Georgia Bulldogs. Where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, I would like to see him go to the Carolina Panthers. They're a team that really could use some help along the defensive line and at the edge rusher position. They have DJ Wanham there. But I feel like, Evero being the defensive coordinator, he could kind of take advantage of the versatility that Walker has and possibly move him around a little bit and really create advantageous situations for him.
So I went with the Atlanta Falcons, and the reason for that is they really need pass rush help. Now, they did bring in Leonard Floyd, who's been a journeyman now for a few years and has still been pretty productive, so that helps. But he won't have a lot of help, honestly, and they lost Grady Jarrett in free agency. He's now in the Chicago Bears, so they don't have that interior pass rush unless Rook Ororo starts to, come into his own. So I think for me, I liked him, and he's a tough one for me because he's kind of a tweener. We don't really know what to expect with him. So I purposely wanted him to go to a team that had a defensive-minded head coach. And I think with, Raheem Morris as the head coach, I think it's possible that he may have a better thought as to how to utilize his strengths than going to someone who, like in your example of a Dave Canales, obviously Evero will be the defensive coordinator and have to utilize that. But when you have a head coach that's behind, the X's and O's, and more than likely they're going to stay there longer than, they may fire Evero. Evero, has been a potential head coaching candidate. He then leaves. So to me, I view Jalon Walker kind of as a project in a way. just to figure out how they're going to end up using him. So that's why I liked him in Atlanta.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I did think about Atlanta as well, just because, like you mentioned, they really need pass rush help, and they've been kind of avoiding it, and they really need to address it. In this draft class, being that it's so deep there. But yeah, I think your logic with the head coach possibly being there longer than the defensive coordinator, I think that idea makes sense.
So the last edge rusher we're going to be talking about here, defensive end Mike Green of Marshall. Where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, I'd like to see him go to the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, caveat is this is Trey Hendrickson is there, because then he gets to play opposite of Trey Hendrickson. I think Cincinnati Bengals have, interesting guys at the interior defensive line position like Chris Jenkins Jr. They also have, some guys in the secondary that's pretty decent as well. But I really think him being able to play off of and be a complementary piece to Trey Hendrickson would be really interesting.
Yeah, for me, this might be a little lofty as far as does he get picked this high, but I'm going to go with the Dallas Cowboys. And honestly, I think he kind of fits. From what I can tell, at least I believe this is true, there's been some character type issues or concerns with Mike Green, if I'm not mistaken. So it kind of fits the bill with what the Cowboys have done in the past, drafting guys like Sam Williams, who've been really talented, but obviously, you had that component you had to deal with. He's a guy who's really exciting. He's got a lot of pass rush, but just the problem is he came from Marshall. So it's like he didn't come from the SEC. He came from, a smaller school. That's the big concern. But for him to partner up with Micah Parsons, that seems like a great spot for him. May not be realistic that he gets drafted that high, but you never know. He's got traits. So it could be a team that really would like him. And who knows with Dallas.
Yeah, I mean, I could also see Mike Green, being a second-round pick as well. He doesn't have to necessarily be a first-round pick. There's a lot of intriguing defensive line edge rushers. It's a deep class. There's a lot of different guys. So he doesn't necessarily have to go in the first round. But I do know, he had the big breakout in the Senior Bowl practices, and his stock has been rising since.
So heading over to our defensive tackle group, we're going to be talking about Mason Graham of your Michigan Wolverines, Joe. Where would you like to see him go?
I paired him with the Jacksonville Jaguars, team that I feel like, they've got some interesting edge rushers with Josh Hines-Allen and Trayvon Walker. They have Eric Armstead in the middle as well, but outside of Eric Armstead, they don't really have anybody. So I think it'd be interesting to kind of pair Eric Armstead up with Mason Graham and fix the interior defensive line of the Jacksonville Jaguars, who was getting gashed and let up a ton of rushing yards.
So are you not a big believer in the defensive tackle out of LSU that they drafted last year?
No. You are much higher on him than I am.
Yes, I am. And for whatever reason, his name escapes me.
Mason Smith, you're talking about.
There it is, Mason Smith. Thank you. Well, he fit the Trent Baalke mold of the type of defensive tackle that he likes to draft. He's no longer there. So it's a former regime. And, as a result, he might, I don't say he's on the chopping block, but his opportunity to play could be greatly reduced. So I could see where you're coming from with that. I went with the Carolina Panthers. I think this would be a great landing spot for him. You got Derek Brown there, who is just a huge run stuffer. I mean, the guy just eats up on tackles. And you and I both believe that if you're going to be a really good defensive tackle in IDP, you got to get a lot of sacks. You got to get a lot of QB hits. And Mason Graham, I think, is definitely capable of that. I think he's capable of doing a lot of things.
Yeah.
But it depends on what the team decides his role is going to be. Is he going to be more of that pass rushing defensive tackle, or is he going to be more that, that one tech who's just going to be, trying to clog up the offensive line and get more focus on the run defense? Mason Graham, I think you could speak to it better than I could. I think he can do it all. So I would rather him partner with a guy like Derek Brown, because now they can't just key on Mason Graham, and he can kind of be free to play all around, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, that would definitely be the advantageous situation. You don't want him just kind of trying to be like the gap stuffer, run clogger. I mean, he's got the ability to be way more than that, and he's got the pass rush tools, and he's a guy that really is disruptive in beating his guy one-on-one and getting those tackles in the backfield as well.
So the other defensive tackle we're going to be talking about, a guy who's been a riser, and that's Walter Nolen out of Ole Miss. Where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, I chose the Pittsburgh Steelers for him. Kind of becoming that Cam Hayward replacement, but also similar to, your thoughts with Mason Graham going alongside of a guy like Derek Brown. I mean, now Nolan could be inside, right, next to a guy like Cam Hayward. They don't have a ton of depth there at the interior, defensive line position either. I know at the other edge position, they got a guy like Isaiah Loudermilk, but Walter Nolen has a lot more ability and
I don't think most people know who Loudermilk is. That's pulling in deep.
Hey, I mean, I took a look at teams' depth charts and things before this, so
yeah. Well, I mean, I think Keanu Benton's probably the bigger name, and I believe out of Wisconsin, if I'm not mistaken, the fourth round.
He's the traditional nose tackle, yeah.
Yeah, right. Which Nolan is, he's more of that one tech type of, but Steelers run a 3-4, so
I think he could, right? I think he could be, in a 3-4, that interior defensive end opposite of a guy like Cam Hayward, and
right.
He's
not the nose. He's Benton's in the middle, and then it's Hayward, and yeah.
He's under 300 pounds, so I feel like he can't really. Unless he puts on, some weight. I mean, the guy is young. He is 21 years old. He can certainly do that. But I think, it'd be interesting if he was kind of an interior defensive end in a 3-4.
Yeah, so for me, I'm going to go with the Buffalo Bills. I think that, Ed Oliver needs some help. I mean, they've had guys like Daquan Jones in there who have done a good enough job. But I think if they were to bring in someone like him to partner with Ed Oliver, you also have got guys like Greg Rousseau and now Joey Bosa. The whole defense really is pretty solid. Outside, they really need a cornerback pretty badly. So, and I guess their safety room isn't the best. But nevertheless, at the end of the day, it would be, I think, a good landing spot for him to be a part of that supporting cast. So I think, and he'll probably go in that later first rounds. I think it makes sense.
Yeah, no, the Bills make sense. I mean, you mentioned it. There definitely is a need there. And they're also a team that likes to kind of rotate their defensive line as well. So adding another piece like Walter Nolen would make sense for the Bills.
Heading over to the linebackers, Joe. What do you think Jihaad Campbell should be going here?
Yeah, I'd like to see him go to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, kind of fill that role that Devin White left behind, and he gets a chance to play next to a guy like Levante David. But I ultimately just would like to see him go to a team like the Bucs that has a guy like Bowles. He's the head coach. He's a creative defensive guy. Feel like he'll let Campbell, blitz and rush the passer, kind of move him around and put him in those advantageous situations.
Honestly, that's a really good landing spot. You're almost making me want to change my pick to yours, because that's actually a really good one, because you're right. And also to Levante David, I mean, how much longer does he have?
Right.
He's been the centerpiece of that defense. So having a guy like Campbell, he can kind of take over the reins. I went with the LA Rams. The Rams depth chart at linebacker is pretty paper thin. Right now, you're looking at Omar Spates, which we have talked about, or they also have Nate Landman, who came over from the Falcons. Guy can't stay healthy. So he's a rangy linebacker, can do a lot. So to me, that linebacker room is ripe for the picking. So if you could get a guy like Jihaad Campbell in there, he could definitely cause some damage.
Yeah. No, I like that spot as well. And, they're also a team that's struggled to have linebackers that can cover. That's something that they've been burned by as well. So the Rams make a lot of sense there.
So going on to our next linebacker, Carson Schwesinger from UCLA. Where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, it's interesting because I had thought about the Rams, but I ultimately chose to go with the Raiders for Schwesinger here. Just because, Pete Carroll's there. We've seen the value at the linebacker position that he's been able to have, with guys like Bobby Wagner in the past, even KJ Britt as well, with the Seattle Seahawks. And, I know they got a Landon Roberts. They have guys like Luke Masterson, did draft a linebacker last year as well from Ohio State. But he hasn't really hit the field much. We don't really know what to expect out of him. Schwesinger's been an interesting guy. He's kind of been on the rise, and based on the Las Vegas Raiders' needs and Pete Carroll coming over, I think that's a good spot for him.
Another great landing spot, Joe. You're trying to pull me off my picks to go towards you because I think that makes a lot of sense. I will be disappointed if that were to happen. I'm hoping that Devin White makes a comeback. I'm holding on hope, and I think this would probably be his last shot to do so. At the end of the day, I actually want the Arizona Cardinals. That linebacker room is pretty bare bones. I mean, right now you had Kaiser White. He's a free agent, and then they bring in Akeem Davis Geither, but he's never been a starting linebacker. He's been a rotational guy, so they really could use some help at that linebacker position. So bringing in a guy like Schwesinger, I think could really make a lot of sense for them, and then he becomes the bona fide starter for them. And ultimately, it could help with pass rush, too. I was impressed how much this guy could really split the gaps when they send him screaming down, in the middle. So I think it adds a little bit element to their defense that honestly is kind of vanilla.
Yeah, it definitely does. And, another defensive-minded head coach there with Gannon makes sense. But yeah, I mean, it's crazy how versatile a lot of these guys are that can kind of do multiple things. And especially, at the linebacker position, not only can they cover, but a lot of them can really blitz and help in the run as well.
So head over to our lone cornerback that we're talking about, but he's not just any quarterback, Joe. He's a unicorn, and that's Travis Hunter. We opted to talk about him here in the IDP episode instead of the wide receiver episode because reports seem to indicate he's going to be primarily a corner, but moonlighting as a wide receiver. Where would you like to see Travis Hunter go?
Yeah, I chose the Tennessee Titans for Travis Hunter.
Wow.
And that's because, he gets to play opposite of a guy like L'Jarius Sneed in Tennessee. And then ultimately, for his real value in Dynasty, too, is the fact that he's potentially going to play both sides of the ball. So I chose not only an offensive-minded head coach, but then the Tennessee Titans. I mean, we've been talking about it on our wide receiver video, just how they don't really have anyone outside of, Kelvin Ridley. I know Tyler Boyd's there. They got Chika Okonkwo, but they really could use a dynamic playmaker as well. And that's what really Travis Hunter could bring. And I know the other tough part of that is we're not sure who the quarterback's going to be, but a lot of these situations where these teams need wide receivers don't have quarterbacks either.
So I would personally hate this if this happens, but from a IDP standpoint, no, I'm going to go with the New England Patriots.
Oh, okay.
So as a Bills fan, I would not want to see that division rival getting a player like him. But honestly, I can't think of a better landing spot for him. At the end of the day, Mike Vrabel would be his head coach. And even if you remember his days in Tennessee, Joe, I remember when he used to bring in defensive linemen and use them in the red zone to end up, whether giving it as a handoff or trying to get him involved in throwing it. Vrabel can be quite creative, honestly. Even doing a lot of wildcat stuff he used to do with Henry. Not the point when wild card happened with Ronnie Brown and Miami Dolphins, but you get my point. So, and on top of that, one of the things we always talk about from a corner standpoint, and you kind of mentioned it with L'Jarius Sneed, you want a really good corner on the opposite side, or else those teams could just completely avoid him, and then he's not getting any stats in the box score. Well, they're not going to be able to avoid Travis Hunter with Christian Gonzalez on the other side. One of the, I'd say probably the budding, upcoming corners in the NFL. So having a guy like that on the opposite side, plus he can moonlight on offense. You got a guy like Drake May, who a lot of people are excited about. He's got a lot of potential, and ultimately that wide receiver room is still lackluster. I mean, you've got some guys, younger guys who show potential. You brought in Stephon Diggs, which is effectively a 1-year deal, even though it's a 3-year deal, to kind of help with the development of Drake May, but that doesn't scare me. So then Travis Hunter, I think, could play on both sides of the ball. You're going to see Mike Vrabel, I think, use him as a chess piece, as he's seen even his mentor or whatever, Bill Belichick, used to do at times, and bringing different people on the field. I even remember when they used Marcus Jones. Remember when Marcus Jones, he's a corner, but they were using him on offense. I forgot it was a game or two. It's like, who's this Marcus Jones guy? So I think at the end of the day, ultimately, for Travis Hunter owners, I think you're going to want him to go where there's a good opposing corner, for one, and for two, a coach that's going to want to figure out ways to get him the ball. manufactured touches on offense. May not get 100% of the snaps, but you're going to get him some manufactured touches.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's unrealistic to just think that he's going to play 100% of the snaps on both sides of the ball like he did in college. But yeah, I mean, heck, that secondary for the New England Patriots would be very interesting. Carlton Davis came over in free agency with Christian Gonzalez as well, add Travis Hunter. And, it's honestly pretty, there's a realistic shot that Hunter also falls to the Patriots based on, some of the different reports in the mock drafts that have come out.
Yeah, it sounds like he won't get past the Giants. From the recent reports are indicating, 2 and 3 are, Giants and Browns are not going to be quarterback. Right. So Cam Ward 1, probably Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter 2, 3, and then then it goes on for the Patriots. So time will tell, but that's what at least the recent buzz is saying. So heading over to the safety group, we've got safety Malaki Starks. Joe, where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, I chose the Miami Dolphins. They lost Javon Holland in free agency. Their safety room is a mess. They had Jordan Poyer there last year as well. He's a free agent. And I think, Malaki Starks, he's a ball hawking safety. He's more of the deep safety guy. And just with his athleticism and his ability, and then just the pure need at the safety position for the Dolphins.
Yeah, I went with the Kansas City Chiefs. You look at their safety room. They lost Justin Reed. They've got Brian Cook in that free safety role, and they've got Jaden Hicks in that strong safety role. So really, neither of them, Hicks didn't play all that much. Cook has. I think that Starks would be an immediate starter for them. And I wanted to pick a team, like you said, he's a ball hawking safety. I want to pick a team that there's a decent pass rush there that caused some havoc, which would allow for, pressured throws, which would then lead to more pass deflections and interceptions, because I think that's where he's going to make his money as far as getting interceptions, getting pass deflections. So
yeah,
I think the Chiefs could make a lot of sense for him.
Yeah, they could, and I mean, they lost Justin Reed as well. They're gonna have to fill that void. I don't think necessarily Hicks is the guy to do that.
No.
So yeah, Starks to the Chiefs would make a lot of sense.
All right, last but not least, we've got safety Nick Emmanwori from South Carolina. Joe, a guy you and I are quite excited about. Where would you like to see him go?
Yeah, I'd like to see him go to the Minnesota Vikings with Robert Flores. I think this guy is just
Robert Flores.
Or Brian Flores. Sorry about
that.
Robert Flores. Brian Flores, rather. I just, Flores is a creative guy. He likes to just move guys all around. And that's the type of guy, Nick Emmanwori is. He's more of that box player. He also feel like could be utilized in as the linebacker position. See him blitzing. And, they did lose a safety and Cam Bynum to the Colts. They have they still have Smith back there, and a guy like Josh Metellus, who they've kind of had in this role, but just another guy for Brian Flores to be creative. And he really is a guy that likes to blitz and just create chaos for opposing quarterbacks.
Well, Joe, we started off the same, and we are going to end the same. I'm with you on this one. I think it'd be a slam dunk for Nick Emmanwori to go with the Minnesota Vikings. A lot of the reasons that you said. Cam Bynum leaves free agency. Harrison Smith's not getting any younger. In that linebacker core, although people get really excited about Ivan Pace, I'm not scared about it. I don't think there's any, lethal, force out there in the middle linebacker position. You've got Ivan Pace and you've got Blake Cashman. Both guys, in my mind, could be replaceable. So now, mind you, Emmanwori's not going to replace him, but he's going to have more opportunities for tackles. So you got, I think, even more opportunities for tackles. Like you said, he could be used in a variety of ways. The safety room, there could be some, like I said, Smith getting older, Bynum leaving, Metellus, sometimes they use more in that, big nickel. So I think at the end of the day, I think I would really like that pick for Emmanwori going to the Vikings.
Yeah. That to me was the most excited place that I have, and a lot of that just because of Flores and what he's able to do, and he knows how to put guys in the right situations.
Well, and the defense itself is strong. It's one of the stronger defenses. So for him to be able to complement that defense, I think But also, there are still enough holes at those positions that we talked about that he could really take advantage of. Well, that does it for this episode. We talked about the best rookie IDP landing spots for Dynasty Fantasy Football, according to Joe and I. These are the players that we're hoping, these are the places we hope these players will go. Thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time.